Welcome to Go For Your Life. It's a podcast presented by me, Caro, and my sweet dog Sparky. He's my co-host. 16 years old, people, but still co-hosting. Yes. The podcast is about everything for everyone. Basically, a very broad variety of guests. And we really are here to inspire you, encourage you, to just live your life, to go for your life, to have a great life and to reach your goals. And how do you do that? You get inspired by other people. So I hope you enjoy this podcast. Please tell your friends about it and support me in this lovely journey, which is my favorite thing to do, podcasting. Thank you very much for listening. So welcome back to another episode of Go For Your Life. And we have Claire.
Hello.
Claire, I would say, is this already the third time?
Second.
The second. In my head, you've already been twice, but maybe that was just in my head. Maybe I just listened to it twice. I don't know, Claire. Thank you so much for coming back, Claire. I hold you so close to my heart. You're like a soul sister. I think we've had many lives together already.
Certainly.
Absolutely. No doubt about it. I love you so much. I also really respect you as a person, a being, a yogi, and also like how you just run your business. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So thank you so much for coming in today, Claire.
Thank you, Caro. Thank you for having me.
Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo. So we like to get straight into it. That's usually how we have our conversations. It's kind of how we roll. So I have been teaching in your beautiful space a few times in Bern, Switzerland, and you run a yoga space, but you don't run it like the regular yoga studio, which is why I want to make this episode, is to really, I think you have such an amazing new way of looking at how to run a yoga space, I would say, and I hope that more and more people will pick it up. So I'm just gonna throw it out there straight to you. If you could explain, like, what do you do there and how is it different to your regular yoga studio?
So, thank you. In a way, it's not a new way, it's an old way. So I found myself in a position nearly 2.5 years ago where I was unemployed. This studio that I had been working for closed, and I was faced with a decision of either leaving Switzerland and looking for employment elsewhere, staying in Switzerland and looking for employment in other yoga studios, or doing something on my own. And my original plan was to give it a few months and to see how working on my own went. So I rented various different spaces around the city, and I was very fortunate in that my students were happy to cart their yoga mats with them and come wherever I was. So I was very lucky in the sense that I had a group of students who had already experienced the way that I teach and were interested in continuing that experience. So that's a massive advantage to start with. In the end, what I realized was to have a space is a huge luxury, and it's also important because yoga is not, in my opinion, something that works well in a space that has a commercial interest. So what I mean by that is I believe very strongly in the principle of a shala, the idea of a designated space for spiritual practice. And whilst the places that I was teaching in were perfectly lovely and very nicely organized, I felt that it would be of benefit to the students, to the community, and also to myself as a teacher to have one space, and within that space to be able to create a bhav, to create a feeling of being uplifted, a feeling of sanctuary, Also a feeling of sharanam, a feeling of refuge. And yoga is all of these things. And yes, of course, we can practice yoga absolutely anywhere. And yoga itself is all of these things. But in the 21st century, in the world that we live in, to have a space that is sacred and designated for these practices is very beneficial for everyone. So I started looking for a space, and my original plan was that it would be just me teaching there. It would be a simple space, a simple room with an altar, because for me, devotion is an important part of my practice. And also, because I got to choose what was on the altar, which is a very great luxury, I knew that I wanted to focus on the sacred feminine. And so I was really excited about the prospect of having space to have the Tri-Shakti, to have the three energy forms of the sacred feminine. Anyway, so I was looking for a space. I successfully found a space. And as soon as I found a space, the next thing that happened was that teachers who I knew from within the community in Bern expressed an interest in sharing the space. So my initial intention was just to create this very small, very low key kind of place where, you know, those students who'd been so diligently following me around with their yoga mats could leave their yoga mats in one place. And then other teachers expressed an interest in sharing that space. So very quickly it became obvious to me that I had an opportunity to rent the space. So I was obviously renting the space for myself, but then I can sublet this space to all these other yoga teachers who suddenly also want something. Or I have the potential to create another yoga studio. Now, anyone who's spent time in Bern knows that the one thing that Bern does not need is another yoga studio, because literally every other door in Bern is another boutique yoga studio. So I definitely wasn't going to do that. The other reason I definitely wasn't going to do that is because I have very strong feelings about capitalism. And I have very strong feelings about commercializing yoga. So I knew that if I had a space, I wanted to share the space. So at that point, I tried to find a way where we could work together as a group of teachers to share the rent on the space, to support each other, to maintain a certain amount of independence. So there are, most of the teachers are Jivamukti trained teachers who work in the Jivamukti method, but there are one or two who aren't. And we could support each other with the way that we teach, even though, you know, there is that sort of diversity as well of teaching. So rather than a sense of this has to be this way or it has to be that way, there's a little bit more flexibility. And that was the beginning. And then very quickly, I realized that it was still essentially me renting the room out to other people, even though the rent and even though the cost was very low to the other teachers. And then I decided that rather than having it be my space that other people rented from me, it would be more effective to set up, now in Switzerland it's called a Verein, which means an association, or like a group. You could even say like a club. So we established Yoga Verein Bern, and now the space is administered by the Verein. So it's, from a financial perspective, it's completely not for profit. And there's a conversation to be had about profit compared to sustainability, because they're not the same thing, but people often get confused when you say something's not for profit. They're like, oh, but how can you make a living off it if it's not for profit? Whereas there's a big difference between
profit and sustainability.
Exactly.
For sure.
And so it's a not-for-profit organization. We have shared social media accounts, so we can promote things collectively. and we practice in each other's classes. We actively promote each other in our classes, or hopefully we actively promote each other in each other's classes. And there's a shared student community. So the students practice with the different teachers. And now this is the bit that's a little bit exceptional about that.
Yeah.
The students pay the teachers directly. So it's not like a yoga studio in the sense that you have one membership and you can just drop in whenever you like. Instead, you have to have an energetic connection with the teacher whose class you're attending, in the sense that whilst I have strong feelings about capitalism and strong feelings about the commercialization of yoga, we do live in a capitalist society, and therefore a financial exchange is in many ways an energetic exchange.
Yeah.
So the idea that I come to your class, Caro, and I pay you, Caro.
Yeah, exactly.
This has a different sense of commitment and a different sense of connection, rather than I pay, I don't know, Yoga Studio Sunshine.
Yeah.
Yoga Studio Sunshine pays Caro. It's
It's a very different thing. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's interesting because initially there was some resistance to this, both from students and from teachers, because there was concern that it would be too complicated. But actually, I have found that this isn't the case at all, that those students who are interested in practicing with the different teachers are more than happy to pay the different teachers individually. And I've also found that level of honesty to do with where the money is going, the students can see it. And of course, the beautiful thing about the Verein, so the teachers, most of the teachers who work there are members of the Verein, but you don't have to be. You can still rent the space if you choose not to be. Many of the students choose to be members of the Verein because they also want to have their say in how much toilet paper we buy and what variety of toilet paper. You know, I mean, it's these tiny
and
things
tea,
that most
what
of the
tea we're
time
drinking.
Absolutely essential. And most of the time, these are things people don't care about or don't think about. And you walk into your shiny yoga studio and everything is provided for you. And if the purpose, or one of the many purposes of yoga, is self-realization, then surely some sense of taking responsibility, or some sense of, I mean, in Patanjali talks about kaivalya and the idea of independence. The idea of like standing for ourselves. And if you're just walking into a studio and you're meeting some lovely person on reception and they're taking your money and you're being directed to a changing room, and then you never have to communicate with another person. You never have to, the teacher never has to know your name. You never have any sense of ownership. And I don't mean ownership necessarily in a materialistic sense, but I mean ownership of your practice.
Well,
So
and as you said before, also you're also really bringing back sort of the empowerment of teachers, right? Because
Absolutely.
I think that's something that you and I are both very passionate about. Because what I love so much about how you're running this space is very much like you're the ultimate contrast to ClassPass and OneFit and all these things that we're dealing with. Like, oh, you get €4 for a class from some person who just wants to come in and you probably never see them again. You know, it's just, you're doing the opposite. You're going, no, we don't really want that. We want committed people. We want people to to really express like, hey, you're my teacher and I really want to support you, and understanding exactly what you're saying, where that money goes, where, you know, that I think that's what I love so much about, you're making it a lot, I don't know, like more sustainable, but also you're just making it more like that the yoga teacher really counts also, you know?
But it also makes the yoga teacher accountable. Like
Exactly. Yeah.
if you teach at a studio where you never get to know the names of your students, where you're
Mm-hmm.
paid, like, you know, you're paid whatever your hourly rate is, or maybe you're paid per student or whatever,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, who are you accountable to?
Yeah. Exactly.
And
Exactly.
this is
Yeah.
a way of making, not making sure, because you know it's not my job to make sure of anything, but it's a way of encouraging teachers, or creating a space where
Yeah.
teachers can be accountable to themselves
Yeah.
and accountable to what they teach.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's, if you want it to be sustainable, if you want it to be, as in if you as a teacher working at Hrdayam, if you have this desire and this passion to really make it work, you
Mm-hmm.
have to work really hard.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
It's
And but
not
again, that's empowerment, isn't it? You know?
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly like
Yeah.
you know, yes, Hrdayam has social media channels, but it's a very small, and as a space, it's only been there for 2 years now, so you
Mm-hmm.
know we're still trying to build an audience, so to
Yeah.
speak.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um
Yeah.
so in order to do that, then as a teacher you have to put a lot of work in.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
if I think about other studios that I've worked at in the past, the amount of effort I've had to put into explaining what I share and
Mm-hmm.
being authentic in my practice
Yeah.
is very different. I'm not saying
Mm-hmm.
it's better or worse, but it's very,
Yeah.
very different.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Here, I sit when I teach, or I'm discussing something, and my livelihood is completely dependent upon my capacity to share authentically, and to share yeah, with this kind of deep love and compassion. You
Mm-hmm.
know, it's not, if I'm not good at my job, I don't get paid.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
yeah, it's a lot more, in a way, it's much more, it reveals
Yeah.
one's commitment
Yeah. Yeah.
to 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 yoga.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I see many teachers who whose commitment is different to mine,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and for them perhaps they have different needs and
Yeah.
share different things.
Yeah.
But for
Yeah.
me, I I think, I mean, I know I've said to you when we've been talking personally, there will come a time, or there may come a time, when what I share is no longer relevant. And at
Mm-hmm.
that point, I return to my practice, and
Yeah.
I will no longer be a yoga teacher. I will go
Mm-hmm.
back to being a sadhaka.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm still a sadhaka now, obviously, but right now
Yeah.
I'm a sadhaka who shares,
Mm-hmm.
rather than a sadhaka who is solitary.
Yeah.
And I recognize that at the moment there is something that I offer that is well received.
Yeah. Exactly.
And I
Exactly.
hope that that is because I am able to communicate in a way that resonates.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I'm taking a risk
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And that risk is, I mean, it's not something I love, but it is
Yeah.
something that I feel I have a responsibility to do.
Absolutely. But I think the risk is, at the same time, that fire in your belly, it's the risk of like, it's of course it's risky to be who you are also, I think that that's
Exactly.
what it is, and because even like I always make the joke also in classes, like if I never see you again, I won't take it personal, because you just know that
Yeah,
what
yeah,
we share and who we are authentically ourselves, it's not for everyone, and that's also what I learned
absolutely.
in my career is like, it's fine, and I
Yeah.
think that it makes your committed student even more committed, because they really get it.
It's not about pleasing people. And I think
Exactly.
that's the other thing as well. It's like this is where it gets like into this very gray kind of mucky area where there
Mm-hmm.
are so many people I see who are desperate to please.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think it's really sad
Yeah.
because if I think of my
Mm.
teachers don't want to please people because they want them to come back to class because they want them to feed their ego. They
Yeah.
want to bring people to a place of I was going to say a place of pleasure, but to bring them to a place of being able to sustain joy and happiness from within.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's like if I think about my teachers, particularly my Sanskrit teacher, when I think about her, the connection that I have with her is um, it's not based on her needing to see me every
Mm-hmm.
week. It's
Yeah.
based on the fact that she has taught me basically that everything will be okay,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
pretty awesome thing to have taught someone.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
fact that she's shared that with me through the medium of Sanskrit and Patanjali and the Bhagavad
Yeah.
Gita and various other texts, because she's communicated the essential, like the distillation of these teachings,
Mm-hmm.
because she's
Mm-hmm.
communicated them so clearly to me,
Yeah.
I have that within me now.
Yeah. It's
So in a
distilled in you.
sense,
Beautiful. Yeah.
I was going to say, in a sense, I don't need her,
Mm-hmm.
but I I do need her.
Yeah.
It's like, one
Conclusion,
day
I
I
do need
won't,
her.
but now I do. And it's that having a place and a person
Mm-hmm.
who you can touch base with when you
Yeah.
connect into these teachings. So it
Yeah. Yeah.
becomes
Yeah.
about the
Yeah.
teachings,
Yeah.
not about the teacher.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
have a
Yeah.
space where it is about the teachings and not the teacher. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not my job as a teacher to please other people. It's
Yeah.
my job to teach as authentically and as
Yeah.
genuinely as I can.
Yeah. 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 No, and
But
I think that
that's
that's a really important part, specifically the society we live in, and specifically how yoga is sold. This sort of like, one size fits all, and this kind of, like, yeah, this stuff that doesn't really resonate with us so much. And I think also something that I'm wondering with the setup you have, do you have a lot of students that take classes with everyone in the space, or do you have very specifically, you have to, people follow you and people follow the other teachers, or is there a
we
bit?
have a mix of both.
Yeah.
So we have
Yeah.
some students who have a definite preference for some teachers, and then
Mm-hmm.
we have other students who are very happy to move between teachers depending on what their need is at any given time.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's yeah, it's both.
Yeah.
Mm.
No, and I think it takes a specific type of teacher to teach at your space, because I think it's also, you gotta love community as well, don't you? You gotta be, because it's
Yes,
beautiful.
you absolutely have to be prepared to meet people
Yeah.
and learn their names.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And actually, I think it also takes a certain level of honesty.
Mm-hmm.
And I think very quickly people see through I mean, this is just me being slightly catty, but the idea of like the love and light. I have nothing
Yeah.
wrong with love and light. Love and light is marvelous. Of course, I believe strongly in love and light, but I also believe very strongly that we have good days and bad days,
Yeah.
and that's life.
Yeah.
And the wellness industry and the things that all of the media that tells us that it's, you just have to smile and everything will be fine.
Yeah. Feel the bliss.
Uh,
Feel the bliss.
yeah, it's just it's not gonna wash.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No. I think that that's a beautiful thing. No darkness, no stars, like that's the practice,
Exactly.
and I think I was actually just speaking about this in class very passionately as exactly what you were saying, like, and the group that I teach, or most of the students that I teach kind of get that anyway, but it's like, it isn't just bliss. It isn't just, light and love and all that sort of, white doves feelings, because it's actually the practice can be really dark and really tough and really sort of like, whoa, all the layers are coming up and you got to be prepared for that. It's not, that's yoga to me. It's
It's the
really,
wholeness.
yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And it's recognizing that it's a process.
Yeah.
And if we were existing in a constant state of Sat Chit Ananda, then we wouldn't be looking at our social media, we wouldn't be watching the news, we wouldn't be doing any of those things, because we'd be existing in a constant state of Sat Chit Ananda. So, I was teaching at the moment, the focus this month in Jivamukti is Advaita. And the idea of non-dualism. And I read an introduction to one of Shankaracharya's texts. And in the introduction, it said, everyone feels alone until they don't. And I just thought that was such an interesting, like, for me, that was really a clear way of putting it. Like, the experience of being embodied is the experience of being separate. It is the experience of being alone. And eventually, through our practice, through creating the samskara of togetherness, we realize that we're not alone. And it's this paradox of being a human being. And it's these teaching, I mean, it's funny because obviously I work with a lot of teachers who are fairly new to the Jivamukti method, because it's the space itself being part of the franchise of Jivamukti, which is a whole nother issue that I'll happily talk about another time. Because that's like,
we'll park that one, Claire. We'll
just park it over there for a minute. But how could a not-for-profit space be a part of a global franchise?
Exactly. Yeah.
It is possible. It is actually totally possible, which is quite amazing. But so I work with a lot of teachers who are finding their feet in this method, and particularly talking about some of these quite intense philosophical ideas. And it's so wonderful to have a space where people know they can come to talk about these intense philosophical ideas. So where people know if they come to one of my class. I mean, for God's sake, in Sunday's class I was talking about Nietzsche. It's like you're not going to get. It's not just going to be something that is purely focusing on what is physically satisfying.
Yeah.
And this is, for me, this is something that most commercial studios don't value.
And don't represent either. Like, they don't even go anywhere near it.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Like,
I don't know many commercial studios that have like a philosophical component to their timetable.
And do you think
And
that's fear, Claire? Like, are they afraid that people are not ready for it, don't want to hear it? Or is that what it is, you think?
I think it's a combination of things. And I
Mm.
don't think that they're wrong to be afraid. I don't think there's any money whatsoever to be made in yoga philosophy. And I think that's marvelous.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
I
the
don't think there
point.
should be
It's
any
the
money to be
freaking point.
made. Exactly. But I
Yeah.
think that, and this is what I find, like, as we're going in that direction, we will go in that direction. This is something that I find one of the reasons why people have said to me, like, why don't you make Hrdayam a studio? Like, why don't we have this one membership? Why don't you make it a for-profit space instead of a not-for-profit space?
Yeah.
And because what I observe is the second you start thinking about making something commercially viable, everything shifts. And it's heartbreaking that I
Yeah.
see
Yeah.
experienced practitioners, experienced, dedicated teachers who at the point at which fear enters into,
Yeah.
oh my God, what if people don't come? How are we going to
Yeah.
pay the rent?
Yeah.
How are we going to pay? And all of these fears are completely reasonable.
Yeah.
These are
They're valid. They're really valid. Yeah.
yeah, I mean they're basic fears. Of
Yeah.
course we need to pay the rent. But if you are driven by that fear, how can you serve anyone apart from the fear?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And I think people are ready for the philosophy. I think people are ready and excited by it. And I also think that we do ourselves, and by ourselves I mean humanity, we do ourselves down when we think we're not ready for it. It's like contemplating the meaning of life is something that humans do.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if my cat contemplates the meaning of life. I'm pretty sure my cats have got the meaning of life sorted.
I just want to say, I think they got it all like
Exactly.
totally done and dusted. Yeah,
But
yeah.
I've never met a human being who doesn't contemplate the meaning of life.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And if we're talking about yoga as something that embraces wholeness, then that very basic philosophical question, it's got to be a part of what we teach.
But also you can't leave philosophy out of yoga, like you can't leave politics out of yoga. It's like there's a few things that you just can't really divide. And if you do, then it's no longer yoga.
Exactly. That's it. Like you can absolutely, you can, but it's not yoga. It's like then you're teaching asana, or
exactly.
then
Then it just becomes gymnastics, or how Stuart would refer to it's a keep fit class.
And that has value. There is absolute value in teaching asana. Asana, the sheer quantity of randomized controlled trials that are now being conducted, particularly in America, looking at, the anatomical, physiological benefits of an asana practice. And, that absolutely has benefit, but it's not yoga, it's asana. And this is something that I talk about a lot with my colleagues here, because it's something that, give me 5 minutes and I'll rant about it forever. Call it something else. Say you're teaching asana. Say it's an embodied movement practice.
Yeah.
Say, give it a different name, but don't call it yoga.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're not teaching yoga, don't call it yoga.
Yeah, we speak about this all the time with teachers, with you and I have a few other colleagues, where it's like, it's also problematic because everything is called yoga when really that's not yoga, and lots of people don't even, I teach classes, Claire, where people probably don't even know what the word asana means, so let alone, that you can explain. So I think that's another thing as well. It's also like, and we speak about this sometimes as well, where if you have, I think you can also just be a professional. And when you're a yoga teacher, you need to be able to teach in all these different setups, and if, you want me to teach just a keep fit class? Sure. Oh, you want me to talk about philosophy? Great. Oh, there's a harmonium. Can I do that? Great. But it's also about because at the end of the day, we are always in service to yoga. Like we're always in service to what we believe in, and it's always going to be there. So even when I'm standing in front of a keep fit class, I am still myself representing of yoga. And that's even the energy, the prana is right there. It's in your face,
Absolutely.
Because that's something that I can't hide it. but I can not talk about it if that's what people, if, oh, you don't want me to chant? Fine. I'm still going to be there. I'm still going to plant a seed, you know? So I don't know,
But
you
the
know?
thing is that you know, and you're doing that
Yeah.
consciously.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that when we start talking about yoga,
Mm-hmm.
we need to be very aware of what we are talking about.
Exactly.
And I
Exactly.
think that if we're talking about decolonizing yoga, if
Yeah.
we're talking about avoiding cultural
Yeah.
appropriation,
Absolutely.
which I
Absolutely.
think is don't yeah, it's like the
Mm-hmm.
idea. I think that the way that the West has abused the meaning of yoga is one
Mm-hmm.
of the worst examples of colonization
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
cultural
Yeah. Yeah.
appropriation.
Absolutely.
And I
100%.
think in order to avoid that, you have to know what you're teaching.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
like
Absolutely.
I love what you just said, the idea that, you know, you can teach an asana class and infuse it
Mm-hmm.
with the prana, with the knowledge of yoga.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you never say a Sanskrit word
Yeah.
because
Yeah. Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And this would then bring me on to the conversations about yoga teacher trainings and
Yeah. Yeah.
what is a yoga teacher.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. No, and I think it's a good, and I think also like, for example, I personally really think that you're making such a big change with your space, the way you run it, how you run it, the also the people that you attract, and how you've really seen that for a long time. Like a lot of the students you have now were students that you also had coming to your other studios, your other spaces that you were explaining. So there's also something about like there can be commitment and there can be,
oh,
that's what
absolutely.
I love about your basically even some of the advice you sometimes give me is just, yeah, there is a niche and there is a need for it. So go out there and go
Yeah.
do it. So, because that was a question I would also have is like, so the way you see your space run now, do you feel like more spaces should run like this, or do you think there is like how do you feel about should we pick up this more or
I
what do you think?
definitely think moving away from a commercial model
Hmm.
can only be good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Particularly if we're thinking about things of like cultural appropriation, decolonization, inclusivity,
Hmm.
trying to create, trying to make sure that yoga is yoga.
Yeah.
I feel that moving away from the commercial model is only going to be of benefit.
Hmm.
Um, I think that it's extremely difficult. I have to say, having done it now for nearly 2 years, it's a difficult model. The amount of emotional energy that is required is much greater than the
Hmm.
amount of emotional energy is required in just turning up and teaching a class.
Yeah.
I mean, and also from a personal perspective, I spend hours in that space, cleaning it and nurturing it
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
loving it. But
Yeah.
then those are things that I personally choose to do. And I
Hmm.
think there are also ways that you can set. I think if I stand where I am now and I'm trying to, so with the creation of the Verein,
Hmm.
we created the Verein after I'd already set the space up.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
what I would do differently in the future, or for anyone else considering this model,
Yeah.
set the Verein up first
Yeah. And then start running it.
and then start running it.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes
Because
sense. Makes sense.
what's happened is that much of the responsibility that rightly fell to me because it was a space that I
Yeah. Yeah.
a space I gave birth to. But
Yeah. 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 Well, very much so. Very much so. Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Um, and the idea, that then means that I have a slightly maternal feeling towards
Of
it.
course. Of
And
course.
that I think it would in retrospect, hindsight being
Hmm.
a wonderful thing,
Yeah.
having the collective in place first, I
Yeah.
think would be a better way of doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
However, I definitely think collectives are much more useful
Yeah.
than studios.
Yeah.
I mean, I I would take any kind of capitalism away from yoga completely.
Yeah, whenever you can.
But you know, yeah, you start looking at any kind of spiritual practice and profit making, and it's something I'm very uncomfortable with.
It's just a strange setup, isn't it? It's just
Yeah.
like sometimes it's really unethical. It's just like, but of course, you know, the teachers need to be sustained. But that's another thing that I find amazing, and you and I know this both. Most yoga studios pay their teachers crazy bad, you know?
Exactly.
Like,
And
wait, what?
yeah,
How much per hour?
yeah. I mean, I
No?
think the amount of money that is required to look after a space and to market a space and all those sorts of things is much higher, I think, than anyone ever imagines it is.
Yeah, yeah.
But and I also think that the very idea that yoga studios are actually making a profit is probably a falsehood, because I think most yoga studios don't make a profit. And this, I know I've said this to you in the past. So why pretend that you do, or why try to?
Yeah.
You know, why not just be completely honest and say this is a
transparent,
not-for-profit?
exactly,
and be totally transparent in where the money is going. And my question is, if the yoga teachers aren't being paid and the studios aren't making a profit, where is the money going?
Yeah, exactly. It's a good question.
And I mean, the idea that a teacher is paid, so for example, a relatively normal rate of pay for a teacher here in Switzerland would be, say, something between 50 and 75 francs for an hour, which is, I know this is Switzerland, okay, so
yeah,
I know that's a ridiculously well-paid yoga teacher. But so if you're paying, so the minimum wage in Switzerland is around about 32 francs an hour. I know this because I had to do some research recently about how much I should be paid if I was cleaning. Because as I'm cleaning the shala, I wanted to make sure that I wasn't overcharging people, but at the same time, I wanted to make sure that it was fair. Fairness being important. Anyway, so the minimum wage in Switzerland is around about 30 francs an hour, 32 francs an hour. And if the average yoga teacher is being paid something like between 50 and 75, they're already getting more than the minimum wage.
Yeah.
But that's if you think the hours worth of work is just the turning up and the teaching.
Exactly. I was hoping you were going to go there.
Because anyone who, as we were saying, is authentically teaching yoga knows that the hour that you turn up and teach, there is so much more work that goes into that hour than just the turning up and teaching. To pay, you know, if you're talking about being paid by the hour in terms of the classes you teach, this is not representative of the work that goes into your classes. And I also think it's perfectly reasonable that students should know this. Because, you know, one of the things that I'm often complimented on is my use of music. And for me to put together a playlist that goes with the asana sequence, this is time consuming. Now, it's my job. It's absolutely essential that I do this. It's absolutely essential that I double check the philosophical concepts that I'm talking about. It's absolutely essential that you
do your research, you do your planning, you do
this is my job.
Sequencing,
and I should be paid for that.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
Because that's how it works.
Yeah.
And I think that, again, when we talk about yoga being not for profit or yoga being something that shouldn't be commercial, it's important that we're clear that we're not saying it should be free.
No, exactly. Exactly.
Look at the idea of Guru Dakshina, and Guru Dakshina is an essential part of yoga. You pay your teacher. I mean,
you value your teacher. You have value in your teacher. Your teacher is important to you.
But the magic thing about Guru Dakshina that I've always thought was wonderful, but also kind of funny, your teacher gets to say what you pay them. And it means that, you know, you go into your training without knowing how much it's going to cost you.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
You
yeah.
take that risk. And I think that
Whatever
is,
they're gonna say. Yeah,
yeah, I mean, yeah. And I
yeah.
mean, you have wonderful stories about particularly Mr. Iyengar.
Mm-hmm.
And when Mr. Iyengar was first teaching, and he had a family to sustain, so
Yeah,
he was teaching in a barter economy.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
He would teach an asana class, and he would get some food.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Um, and this is obviously not an ideal situation,
Mm-hmm.
um, but it's clear that yoga is not something that is free,
No.
but it is something that is valued.
Yeah, exactly, exactly, exactly.
And I
No, and I
think,
think that that's a really important thing to remember. Yeah.
and things like class pass, things
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
they just don't, it's capitalizing
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
on on a very sort of like transient, unsustainable, deeply offensive
Yeah, 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 yeah,
um,
yeah.
treatment of uh, a philosophy and a practice which is thousands and thousands of years old.
Yeah.
And
And
it's,
I think it's really beautiful that you're also using the word offensive, because that's sometimes what I really feel when you get an amount of like,
yeah,
it's sometimes just offensive, specifically to teachers like you and I who have, you a lot more than me, but like have, over decades of experience, and it's just ridiculous. You just
it's,
can't. Gotta have some self-respect sometimes too.
I was talking to a friend of mine who's another very, she's been, teaching for something in the region of 20 years.
Yeah,
And we were talking about how would you calculate a fair price
yeah,
for something?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And we were talking about how you add in if you think of all of the trainings that
mm-hmm.
you and I have
That's
done,
it, that's it.
and it's like the financial and time investment we
Yeah,
have
yeah, yeah,
put in.
absolutely. Yeah,
And this is something that should be respected.
absolutely.
But how can we, apart from just who we are, which is,
Mm-hmm.
obviously you're awesome, but apart from just being awesome, how do we explain that to our students
Yeah.
when they can open an app
Yeah,
and
yeah,
just pick
yeah,
completely randomly from like a
yeah,
picture or a
yeah,
name or a
yeah,
3 sentence bio,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah,
like, how can the gravitas
yeah, yeah, yeah.
of this parampara,
Of
of
all these
this,
layers. Mm-hmm.
how can that be conveyed
Yeah,
in this current climate?
yeah, 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 yeah. No, it's a really good question to ask, because it's hard to mix them. It's hard
Yeah,
to, because it's like you're somewhere and it's an amazing view and you take a picture. It's not the same. It's
exactly.
like, yeah, this doesn't even at all resonate or do justice to
Yeah,
what I saw. That view was. So I think sometimes, and I think it's important to remember, because I think sometimes, and I'm sure you feel the same. Sometimes us as teachers, you got to go with this. You got to go with the capitalism. You got to go on this. But you also you got to still remember though, like, no, wait, hold the phone. Like, I am who I am. I have the experience that I have. And so it's the same with cooking. People think that what people want you to do a catering gig for. I'm like, what? You know, it's
yeah,
like, I'm not just cooking for fun. This, and cooking has been my profession for nearly 20 years. So
yeah.
I have perfected that. I've spent a lot of money on my own, career and investments and stuff. And so yeah, it's good to remember that, definitely.
It's, I think it's part of this challenge that we face now,
Mm-hmm.
specifically thinking about yoga in terms of how do we make sure that we are respecting tradition.
Yeah.
What do we mean by tradition? That's another whole thing.
Yeah.
But that we are, how do we not get dragged down that rabbit hole?
Yeah.
Like,
Exactly.
and this is actually, I mean, this in itself is a wonderful practice because I posted something on Facebook. So I don't use Instagram, I only use Facebook.
Yeah.
And I really don't like doing it. Like it doesn't sit well with me. It has, but this is the thing, like you're talking about, you know, as a yoga teacher, how do I put myself out there? How do I make sure people are aware that I am offering these things? And if you think of it like, you know, I'm trying to just let people know it's out there. Now, I mean, I have two thoughts about this, but I'll come back to the second one in a minute. So I posted something on Facebook, and it's amazing how even after, how old am I? I'm 44. I've been practicing for 23 years. So even after 23 years of practice, I'm still interested in that dopamine, like how many people have liked it. How many people have read it? You know, what's this? And it's fascinating to me that even after all these years of practice, that still triggers me in exactly the same way as it does everything else.
Yeah.
So that's a very revealing thing, like for me as an individual in terms of my own practice.
Yeah.
That's one thing. But the other thing that I was going to say is talking about how do we make people aware of what we're sharing. And I'm always reminded of, and I cannot remember which one of Krishnamacharya's students it was, but one of them, it might even been one of Patabi Joyce's first students. I can't remember. Anyway, one of these sort of like very first yoga teachers who reached a level where their teacher told them they were ready to teach, but they said, you can't look for students. You can only teach when you are invited to teach. And I think that is such a useful thing for us to remember.
Yeah. Yeah.
Only teach when we are invited to
Yeah.
teach.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I have a retreat. I'm just now going to say shamelessly.
Let's plug.
I have a retreat coming up in May.
Yeah.
And it's a mixture of an asana and philosophy retreat, and I'm working with another teacher called James Bogue, who is a very, very gifted communicator of philosophy.
Yeah.
Yoga philosophy.
Yeah.
And promoting this. So I'm offering this because people asked me to teach a retreat. So I was asked to teach a retreat, and I was like, okay, cool, I'll do it.
Yeah.
So I've put the time out there, I'm organizing, whatever, and now people aren't interested. I mean, there's enough people for it to go ahead. It's fine.
Yeah. We spoke
I'm just
about
like,
this.
I don't understand. I was asked to do this, and now there's a resistance to it. Like, this is a very interesting thing for me to learn.
Yeah.
Because now I'm in this place where I'm like, you asked, you didn't. I provided. You're not all coming. I've got spaces that I need to sell. How am I going to sell these spaces without promoting, without telling people that it's out there?
Yeah.
Like, wow, I need to think about this.
Yeah. How does this work? What just happened?
Exactly. Okay, I've got some stuff I need to sit with here. And it's really, because we're told, as yoga teachers, we're told, get out there on Instagram, get those self-dinking Shmayarasana out there. Nice,
Come
get
on.
yourself in a bikini, get yourself on the beach, do some
Vikrasana, let's do it. Woo.
Exactly. And it's like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to sell this. I don't think I should have to sell this. And I don't think I should sell this. So then it becomes like, so where is my responsibility? Like, how am I going to promote? Do I have a responsibility to yoga to promote these teachings?
Yeah, exactly.
And tell people these teachings are here and they are available for them? Or do I simply sit in my heart cave and wait for people to come to me? And I don't necessarily think there's a right or a wrong, or there's one or the other.
Yeah.
It's something that we all have to work with
Well, and
within
like, as you're
yourself.
saying, it's tough to contemplate. It's also, who are you as a person? Like, does that, because Stuart, for example, also does no social media, and he doesn't want any. He's not at all a person that promotes himself. Doesn't want
Yeah,
to do any of that. His sister-in-law does his Instagram, and somehow his classes are always full. His workshops are always full. His retreats are always
exactly.
full. So somehow, you know what I mean? Like, I also think that if the word is out there that you're a great teacher, people will find you. One by one, they'll
Absolutely.
come, as what
And
Roger said. So yeah,
I think it comes back to this idea that we don't need to sell ourselves. We don't need to
exactly.
sell yoga. We
No.
don't need to we don't need to tell people they should do this because it's good for them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
People will come.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's Field of Dreams, I think, the film where they say, if you build it, he will come.
Yeah, 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 yeah. But it is a little bit as it is, I think, also with your space, like, yeah, build it and they will come,
And they
and
do.
then and they'll bring their friends and they'll talk to, like,
And they
that's another
do.
thing, I think this word of
And their
mouth is still,
children.
exactly. It's still a very powerful way of doing it, it's
Yeah,
like just the people telling each other and like just putting it out there, and and I think that because that's
absolutely.
another thing that I'm slowly going to wrap it up, Claire, but
Yeah, of
there's
course.
two really main things I want to ask you is, for you, like, you've been going now for 2 years, you were saying, right? So have you seen it go up and down? Have you seen it grow? Are you happy where it's going? Would you change things differently now, or like where is it at for you now after these 2 years of running a space
So
as you do?
the things that I would like to change, I would like more people to know about the space.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
However, the flip side of that is exactly what you just said. I actually see numbers really steadily growing.
mm-hmm.
So what I see is people coming and people staying. So
Yes.
what we don't have, and this is where the little business mind of mine kicks in. What we
Mm-hmm,
don't have is the transient people. We
mm-hmm.
don't have people who are like just dropping in, just trying it out, and off they go again. But
Yeah.
what we do have are people who come and then keep coming.
Yeah.
And that
Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
is
Hallelujah.
amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Great. Yeah.
So that I'm really happy with, like
Mm-hmm.
unbelievably happy with.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's for me, like from a personal perspective, I was invited to come to Switzerland, and in a way, I have always been in the shadow of those who came before me here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a bad thing. That's just the way it is. Whenever you come into a space as a substitute, then that is
Mm-hmm.
the role that you take.
Yeah.
But what is really lovely now to see that we have an old community, or a community of students who've been consistent across the years that I've been here, and
Mm-hmm.
more people coming into that community. And
Mm-hmm.
what's really lovely to see is the way that the community grows organically.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there is a real sense of people feeling comfortable, feeling valued, feeling seen, and
Yeah.
sharing that with each other,
Yeah.
seeing each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
People who
Yeah.
practice at Hrdayam,
Yeah.
they don't necessarily know each other's names, but they definitely know their faces. And
Yeah.
actually, I think they probably
You
might
know their
even know their
names.
names as well. And I know certainly when I was teaching in some of the bigger studios in London, that was
Yeah.
not the case.
No, 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 no.
But
No, that's the feeling. Definitely, you feel there is a togetherness and a community feeling that is so lovely, and yeah, you just feel at home straight away, and that's also what's so
but it's
beautiful about the
absolutely
space.
not exclusive.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah,
not cliquey. And that
yeah.
and that's the thing.
Exactly, exactly.
That's the thing that I'm so proud of
Yeah,
with Hrdayam is this fact that it's not like, a new person walks in and it's not like, who are they?
but
Someone
that's
walks
also
in
what
and
I
they're like,
love about
hi,
the.
how lovely to have you here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But you know what I think also what your beauty is and your secret is the size of the space. So,
Yes,
the moment it becomes 25 plus, you're gonna have a little clicky there.
yes,
But
yes.
it's just really nice because it's not too big, it's not too small, it's intimate enough, but it's also it's not one of these huge studios where you don't even know
Yes,
where is the toilet, where do I need to go? I'm so confused, kind
exactly.
of thing. And that's also what I think the magic of your place. And it's also
Yes,
my dream of having a space your size is like, yeah, man,
yeah.
let's put 18 mats down or 20, I think, max, and then that's
20,
it.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that's great.
And I think that it kind of brings us back to sustainability in the
Mm-hmm.
sense that
Yeah.
when places get too big, they become unsustainable.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good point.
And I think
Yeah.
that's also particularly as we've all lived through a time where we've noticed massive changes in people's habits in terms of how they practice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
To have something that is sustainable throughout
Yeah.
those times,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
that's my real goal, is to have something that lasts.
Yeah, but with that sustainability as well, Claire, would you say that now, because you have the Verein in place, can you take more of a step back? Have you been able to be less
Not
of
yet, but
the
that's
that's the
part of the
goal?
plan. But this is
Mm-hmm.
I'm you know me, Cara. I'm someone who I do things very, very slowly
Uh-huh. Yeah.
because I really value sustainability. I
Yeah.
really believe in
Yeah.
doing things in increments, like
Yeah.
little by little by little by little.
Yeah.
But in all honesty, I would love there to come a time where I'm not essential to the running of this
Yeah.
space.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
would love there to
Yeah.
come a
Yeah. Yeah.
time
Yeah.
where even maybe even I could, take a step back from teaching for 6 months to a year, and the space would still be completely fluid without me.
Yeah.
This is I mean, one of the things that we've done recently, we've done two things. One is we've started a class on Wednesday evenings, which is specifically for new teachers. So this is
Hmm.
specifically for people who have recently graduated from the
Hmm.
75-hour spiritual warrior class
Yeah.
teacher training that I did last year with Skulk. We're doing again this year in Basel.
Whoop, whoop,
Um,
whoop, 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 whoop. Put it on the show notes. We'll put it on the show notes. Yeah.
thank you, darling.
This here, this
Um,
there. La 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 la. Yeah.
but specifically, this class has been created for them to practice teaching and to
Yeah.
have a
Amazing.
space so they can grow. So
You
this is
need that so much. I
exactly,
love that you do that. I always talk about it here. Like I'm kind
yeah,
of doing this mentorship here at the moment. I'm trying
yes,
to get them in and assist some people in class, but it's so neat. I always think sounds ridiculous. But I always think of Grey's Anatomy and all these, hospital shows, which we are a teaching hospital. Yeah, we should be teaching studios, like
absolutely,
giving teachers the opportunity to shine.
absolutely.
Great,
And also
great.
it allows the students to see the growth of a
Mm-hmm.
teacher,
Yeah,
which
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's amazing.
is actually quite important because
Yeah, it's essential.
it amazes me when people say, well, how do you plan a lesson, or how do you plan a playlist? And I go through it and they're like, that's a lot of work. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah. Bingo.
How do you know
Bingo.
this? And I'm like, 22 years. That's
Yeah,
how I
yeah, yeah.
know this. It's
Yeah,
like you
yeah, yeah.
can't learn this overnight. So
Yeah.
that's one thing. And the other thing that I'm trying to do and to encourage, we've got three women who've just come back from the teacher training in the Jivamukti teacher training in India,
Mm-hmm.
and I would really like to find ways to get them into the timetable and to support them.
Yeah.
So it's,
Amazing.
for me, I really value
Yeah.
this idea of supporting each other.
Yeah.
And like we have, I mean, one of the most amazing things about the team at Hrdayam is the level of experience of teachers we have.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have teachers who have got many, many years of teaching experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it would be incredible if we could use that teaching experience to nurture.
Yeah, exactly. Those who come in.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
then that also gives that sense of continuity for students, so
Absolutely.
they see the natural evolution
Yeah, evolution of a teacher.
teachers.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Amazing.
And as teachers become stronger and stronger and
Yeah.
take up more responsibility, it then shares
Yeah.
the
It's good for the space again also.
exactly.
Like we're
Yeah.
all like in a win-win situation here, like everybody is,
And I am absolutely exhausted by the narcissism and the egos that exist within
Yaha.
it, and I think this is not necessarily anything to do with the spirituality of yoga, but I just think a community or a space that promotes one person over someone else,
Yeah.
like have as a star, and this
No.
person, everyone comes to their classes because it's like, for me, this is,
No, this favorism is so wrong.
it just doesn't, it's not, I don't think it serves anyone. So
No.
I really hope to foster a spirit where we all, together we rise.
Yeah, but it is like, if it's this kind of thing where I feel that a lot with women, and this is
Yes,
women and everybody that identifies as a woman. It's the feeling of like, hey, if one of us is not up, no one is up. If one of us is still suffering, we're still all suffering. Like that's the kind of feeling,
absolutely.
and that's also what I feel in that's what I love about you, and I think it's one of your most beautiful traits, is that you are so humble. You would never feel that like, oh, I'm Claire, I am the one with 2 decades of experience. Like I started this space. It should have been my space, like not at all. And
Never.
you're always in this beautiful role of space holder, of mentor, of mother, of
Yeah.
sister. You are there. You're the teacher, and you really understand what it's like to be a teacher who can also mentor, who can also hold a space. And that is really beautiful, because many teachers can just teach, right, Stuart? But are not necessarily mentors or space holders. So that's the beauty of you. Like, you hold it all together in such a beautiful, humble, loving way that everybody always feels at home and seen, if that's anything that you just said, like, so that's your power.
Thank
And
you so much for
yeah.
saying that, Caro.
No, but I'm really like, I hope Bern knows how lucky it is that that you're there. You know what I mean? I mean, I've sent people to you going, well, go check this out, because, it's, you're lucky. You are. And I miss you all the time. I wish there was like, we were closer to each other in this
Yeah.
crazy Amsterdam, Bern. But I hope to see you soon in person. That's for sure. But no, you're doing such an incredible job. And I want to thank you so much for being on the podcast. The last question, you have to come back for the third time, what I thought was already the third time. Again, for some of the stuff that we parked in this
Yeah.
episode, but we'll be back. We'll be back. Your future plan for you, how do you see yourself, and how do you see the space, and how do you see yourself within that space? You already said it a little bit, that you want to hopefully step back a little bit more, but how do you see yourself in the next few years? Like, what is your wish for yourself and the space?
So my wish for the space is that it continues very much as it is, but that more people find it, so more people have access to it.
Mm-hmm.
My wish for myself is, honestly, I don't have any wishes for myself. I really don't. It's the hardest question anyone ever asks me, because I have no ambition.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, if people, sometimes when I'm feeling depressed, I would think to myself, if you could change anything, what would you change? Like, I just to give myself a reality check. And
Yeah.
whenever I think that, I'm like, nothing. There is
Yeah.
nothing I would change. So my
Yeah.
wish for myself is that everything carries on exactly as it is.
Yeah.
Maybe more people would come to my retreat.
Yeah. That would be a wish for the next few weeks. People,
That's my wish for like the next 3 weeks. Yeah.
Make this wish happen. You got it. You got it. Come on, please do it. Do it. No, but that's also very Mother Goose of you, isn't it? Like, you are. That's very much that's how the mother sees things. Like, kind
Someone,
of. Yeah.
I had my first harmonium lesson today, and the teacher, it was on Zoom, and which is just hilarious, because if you told me you never learn the harmonium on Zoom. Anyway, and he looked at the space that I was sitting in, and he said, I can see an altar behind you. Who's on the altar? And I said, well, my Ishtadevata, or the energy that I mostly work with, is Lakshmi Devi.
Yeah.
And he said, that's interesting. Why do you work with Lakshmi Devi? And the honest answer for why I feel attracted to the energy of Lakshmi is, if Lakshmi represents abundance, it is my greatest desire to have enough for myself that it can overflow, so I can then provide for others.
Absolutely. Mic drop. Boom. You know, that's it. You said it all. You said it all. That's it. Mic drop. That's what, and this is who we are also. Like Miguel always says to me, Carol, can you stop giving things away? Like, can you just...
No.
Where is this book? Oh, I gave it to someone. It was my book. Oh, sorry. You know, like it's just, and actually the one woman on my altar who's shining in this room is Lakshmi, actually. So I feel you, Claire. I feel you. It's a beautiful way of being. And it's just, you know, it makes you who you are. And I'm just so grateful that I know you, that I get to love you, that I get to share this journey with you now for nearly I would say we're getting close to a decade. You know, we're and it feels like many more decades and lives anyway. So I'm so grateful for you, and I'll definitely I will promote the shit out of you. So don't you worry. Don't you worry. It won't be you. It'll be me with this episode. I'll put everything in the links. It's all going to happen. So I have, of course, always sent people your way because you are incredible. And my wish for you is definitely that you keep growing and growing and growing. And that you are happy and healthy. That's the most important thing.
Thank you, my love. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, sister, for existing, for living in my heart. You're, you know, like my heart is a heart cave that you live in as well. So please go check out Claire, the space. If you're in Bern, don't be a stranger. And yeah, please, you know, tell all your friends about coming. And you know the drill, everybody that's listening. As always, be good to yourself, be good to others, especially the animals. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you so very much for listening to Go For Your Life. I love that you listen, so please leave a review or tell your friends about it. You know the drill. Share the love, please. Also, you can follow me on Instagram, Go For Your Life Podcast. And I also have a website, carotech, KAROTAK.com. Thank you so much for listening. And until next episode, bye-bye. Go, go, go.